In times of sorrow and exile, when the people of Israel had been taken far from their land, a man was born who was destined to see the invisible and speak what no one wanted to hear. His name was Ezekiel. He was born into a priestly family, which meant that from a young age he was taught the laws of God, the rituals of the temple, and a deep reverence for what is sacred. His father was a priest, and everything seemed to point toward a clear path. He would grow, serve in the temple in Jerusalem, and continue the tradition of his family. But the story had other plans. When Ezekiel was still young, a tragedy changed the destiny of his entire nation. Babylon invaded Jerusalem. Many were captured, chained, and taken far from their home. Among them was Ezekiel. The journey was long, painful, and silent. They left behind their land, their temple, their memories. The air felt heavy, as if even the sky was mourning with them. When they arrived in Babylon, they were settled. Near the Kabar River, there, a new life began, but not a peaceful one. It was a life filled with questions. Where was God now? Why had he allowed this? Had they been forgotten? Ezekiel carried those questions in his heart. Despite his training, he had no answers, only a deep emptiness. Years passed. Ezekiel grew up in exile, surrounded by a people who had lost hope. Some tried to adapt, others held on to the past, but all of them shared the same pain. At the age of 30, time when he should have begun his service as a priest in the temple, something happened that no one could have imagined. He was not in Jerusalem. There was no temple, there was no altar. Yet it was there, by the river, that the heavens opened. The wind began to blow with force. The sky darkened, but not like an ordinary storm. It was different. It was as if something was descending from above. Ezekiel lifted his eyes, and what he saw was unlike anything he had ever seen. 4 living creatures appeared before him. They had human form, but each one had 4 faces. One of a man, one of a lion, one of an ox, and one of an eagle. Their wings were stretched out, touching one another. They moved without turning, advancing in perfect harmony. Their bodies shone like glowing metal. Beside them were wheels, but not ordinary wheels. They were wheels within wheels, full of eyes all around. When the creatures moved, the wheels moved with them. Everything was connected. Above their heads was something like a platform, shining like crystal. And above that platform, a throne. On the throne was a figure with the appearance of a man, radiant, surrounded by fire and light. The vision was so powerful that Ezekiel could not remain standing. He fell face down to the ground. Then he heard a voice. The voice called him by name. It told him to stand up. It spoke with authority, but also with purpose. It told him that he would be sent to a rebellious people, to a nation that did not want to listen. He was warned that it would not be easy. He would speak, but many would not pay attention. Even so, he had to do it. Ezekiel was called to be a prophet, not a priest in a temple of stone, but a messenger of God among a broken people. The voice told him not to be afraid, that even if he was surrounded by rejection, he would not be alone, that he had to be firm, like a rock, like a wall. Then something strange happened. He was given a scroll. It was filled with words of judgment, lament, and warning. The voice commanded him to eat it. Ezekiel obeyed as he ate it. The scroll was as sweet as honey in his mouth, but the message it carried was heavy. After that, the Spirit lifted him up. The vision disappeared, but the mission had only just begun. Ezekiel returned to the exiles, but he was no longer the same. His eyes had seen the eternal. His life had been changed forever. For 7 days he remained silent, watching, feeling the weight of what he had received. He did not speak, he barely moved. He only thought. After those days, the word came to him again. He was given a clear responsibility. He would be like a watchman if he saw danger and did not warn. He would be held responsible. But if he spoke, even if no one listened, he would have fulfilled his duty. That was how his ministry began, not with applause, not with acceptance, but with hard warnings, uncomfortable messages, and strange actions that caught the attention of the people. Because Ezekiel did not only speak, he also acted. God asked him to do symbolic things, to represent with his body and his actions what was going to happen. One day, he built a model of Jerusalem under siege. Another day, he lay on one side for many days, representing the punishment of the people. People looked at him with curiosity. Some mocked him. Others wondered if he had lost his mind. But every action had a message. Every word had a purpose. Ezekiel had no children. His life was completely devoted to his calling. His story did not revolve around a large family, but around an intense mission. And even though his life seemed lonely, it was not empty. It was a life full of visions, encounters with the divine, moments that no other man had experienced. But it was also a life of pain, because he knew what was coming. He knew that Jerusalem would fall. He knew that the people would suffer, and he knew that many would not. Change in time. That burden followed him every day. Even so, he continued, because he had heard the voice, and once someone hears that voice, they cannot ignore it. Ezekiel's journey was only beginning, and what he was about to see would be even more powerful than the first vision. The silence of Ezekiel ended, but peace never came. From the moment he began to speak, his life became a constant message. He did not speak only with words. Every action he took was a living sign, a warning meant to awaken a sleeping people. But the people did not want to wake up. They lived in Babylon, far from their land. Yet many still believed everything would soon return to normal. They thought Jerusalem would not fall. They believed God would not allow total destruction. Ezekiel knew they were wrong, so God asked him to do something strange. He took a brick and drew the city of Jerusalem on it. Then he built small walls around it. Simulating a siege, he placed ramps, enemy camps, and weapons. It looked clay like a game. But it was not. It was a representation of what was about to come. After that, Ezekiel did something even more striking. He lay on his left side for many days. It was not for rest. It was a sign. Each day represented years of sin of the people of Israel. Then he lay on his right side, representing the sins of Judah. People passed by and watched him. Some stopped, others kept walking. But all of them saw something unusual. Ezekiel did not move. He did not speak. He simply remained there, like a silent sign. God also told him to eat very simple food, bread made from mixed grains, in small portions. It was a sign of scarcity. He was showing the people what would happen during the siege: hunger, desperation, lack of resources. And still many did not understand. They thought it was an exaggeration. They believed Ezekiel was wrong. Then another command came. God told him to cut his hair and his beard. In that culture, this was something very serious. It represented shame, loss, and judgment. Ezekiel took a sword and cut his hair. Then he divided it into 3 parts. One part he burned, another he struck with the sword, and the last he scattered to the wind. Each action had meaning. Some would die in the city, others would fall by the sword, and others would be scattered across the world. It was a clear message, but the hearts of the people remained hard. Ezekiel spoke, but not everyone listened. One day, God showed him something even deeper. He gave him a vision of Jerusalem, but not a glorious Jerusalem. It was a city full of corruption. Ezekiel saw idolatry inside the temple itself. He saw men worshipping images. He saw leaders doing things in secret, believing no one could see them, but God saw everything. Ezekiel felt pain. It was not just a vision, it was the reality of his people. Then he saw something that left him without words. The glory of God, that powerful presence that lived in the temple, began to move. Little by little, it departed, first from the holy place, then from the temple, then from the city. It was as if God was leaving Jerusalem, not because he wanted to, but because sin had filled everything. Ezekiel understood the message. The protection was being removed. Judgment was near. When he returned from the vision, his face showed what he had seen: sadness, concern, urgency. He tried to warn them. He spoke about the danger. He told them to change. But many mocked him. They said the visions would take a long time to come true, that there was no hurry, that everything would remain the same. Ezekiel heard those words, but he did not stop. He knew time was running out. On another occasion, God told him to prepare a bag, like someone about to leave his home. He did it in front of everyone. Then, at night, he dug through a wall and went out through it, carrying his belongings. People watched him, confused. Then he explained, this is how the people of Jerusalem would leave, fleeing in the dark, trying to escape. But not all would succeed. Every action was a warning. Every sign was an opportunity. But the people kept resisting. Ezekiel also faced difficult moments in his personal life. He had no children. He did not have a large family to walk with him on his journey. His life was completely focused on his mission, and even though he spoke with courage, it was not easy. Rejection hurts. Being ignored is exhausting. But Ezekiel kept going, because he was not speaking for himself. He was speaking because he had been seen. One day, something happened that marked his life deeply. God spoke to him with a difficult command. He told him that his wife would die, and not only that, he told him that he must not mourn like others. He must not show public grief. He must not express his pain in the traditional way. Ezekiel heard these words in silence, his heart filled with sorrow. But he did not argue. The next day, his wife died. The pain was real. It was deep. It was human. But Ezekiel did what he had been told. He did not cry in public. He did not show visible mourning. People noticed. They came to ask him why he showed no grief. Then he spoke. He said that this is how it would be when Jerusalem fell. The blow would be so great that there would be no time to mourn as before. Everything would be so sudden, so devastating, that the pain would remain trapped inside. It was one of the most powerful signs, not only because it was a message, but because it was lived. Ezekiel did not just speak about pain, he experienced it. His life was a mixture of heavenly visions and earthly trials, of supernatural moments and real losses. Yet he kept moving forward, because he knew the message was greater than himself. Time continued to pass, and what he had warned about for so long was about to happen. The fall of Jerusalem was no longer a distant possibility. It was a reality approaching with each passing day, and when it finally happened, everything would change, not only for the people, but also for Ezekiel. The time of warnings had ended. Everything Ezekiel had announced, everything he had represented through signs and actions, finally came to pass. Jerusalem fell. The news did not arrive immediately. Days and weeks passed until a man managed to escape and travel from the destroyed city to Babylon. He arrived exhausted, with torn clothes and a face marked by horror. His words were simple, but heavy. The city has fallen. In that moment, everything changed. Those who once mocked, now fell silent. Those who did not believe now remembered every word Ezekiel had spoken. The prophet did not celebrate. There was no victory in what had happened, only pain. The temple was destroyed. The walls were torn down. The houses were burned. Many died. Others were taken as slaves. It was the end of an era. But it was also the beginning of something new. From that moment on, Ezekiel's message changed. He no longer spoke only of judgment. Now he began to speak of hope, because even though everything seemed lost, God had not finished with his people. One day, Ezekiel had another vision. He was taken to a valley. It was not a normal valley. It was full of bones, bones everywhere, dry, white, without life. It was a shocking scene, silent, dead. Then he heard the voice. He was asked if those bones could live. Ezekiel looked around. From a human point of view, the answer was no. But he did not respond with logic. He responded with faith. Only you know. Then he was given a command. Speak to the bones. Ezekiel obeyed. He began to speak, and something incredible happened. The bones began to move. They came together. They formed skeletons. Then tendons appeared. Flesh, skin, but there was still no life. Then he was told to speak to the breath, to call upon the Spirit. He did, and breath entered those bodies. They breathed. They stood up. A vast army, full of life, stood before him. The vision was clear. The people of Israel, who seemed dead, would live again. It would not be the end. There was hope. Ezekiel shared that message, and for the first time in a long time, the people began to feel something different. Not complete joy, but a spark, a possibility. After that, Ezekiel received more visions. One of them spoke about unity. 2 sticks, one represented Judah, the other represented Israel. They were separated, but God said they would be joined again. One people, one purpose, one future. It was a powerful promise, because for a long time they had been divided. But that would change. Ezekiel also spoke of a shepherd, not an ordinary shepherd, a righteous leader, someone who would care for the people and guide them correctly. Many remembered the kings of the past who had failed, but this one would be different. It would be a new time, a better time. Despite everything that had happened, Ezekiel's message began to light the way. But it was not easy. The people still had wounds. There were still doubts. There was still pain. Rebuilding hope is not fast. It is a process, and Ezekiel knew it. That is why he kept speaking. He kept guiding. He kept reminding them that they were not alone. In another vision, he saw a great battle. Nations rising against the people, conflicts, threats, but in the end, God showed his power. Victory did not depend on human strength. It depended on something greater. Ezekiel understood that his mission was not only to warn or to comfort. It was to keep the people connected to God, to remind them who they were, where they came from, and where they were going. Even though he had no children, his legacy would not be small, because his words would become guidance for generations. His visions would be remembered. His teachings would be written down. The man who had been taken into exile was now a strong voice in the middle of chaos. And even though his path had been filled with difficult moments, his purpose remained clear. The future had not yet been fully revealed, but one thing was certain: the story was not over, and what was still to come would be even more surprising. After the destruction, after the pain, after the silence left by the fall of Jerusalem, something began to change. It did not happen all at once. It did not come with noise. It came little by little. Like a light appearing in the middle of darkness, Ezekiel continued receiving visions. But now they were not about ruin. They were about restoration. One of the most powerful came at an unexpected moment. The Spirit took him to a high mountain. From there, he saw something that seemed impossible, a city. But it was not the destroyed Jerusalem. It was a new Jerusalem, perfect, ordered, full of life. In front of him stood a man with a shining appearance, like bronze. He had a measuring rod in his hand. He began to show him every detail: gates, walls, courtyards, rooms. Everything had a purpose. Everything was designed with precision. Ezekiel watched in silence. Every measurement, every structure, every space had meaning. It was a temple, but not like the one before. This one was different, greater, purer, more ordered. It was as if God was showing a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, but in the right way. Ezekiel did not only see, he listened, he learned. He understood that it was not just a building, it was a symbol. The people had lost the temple because of their corruption, but now they were being shown what it would be like when everything was restored, not only on the outside, but also on the inside. In another vision within that same place, something even more powerful happened. Water, Kabul, began to flow from the temple. At first it was a small stream, then it became a brook, then a river, and it kept growing. Ezekiel walked as the water rose, first to his ankles, then to his knees, then to his waist, until it became so deep that he could not cross it by walking. It was a river of life, where the water reached everything changed. Trees grew, the desert blossomed, dead waters became fresh. There were fish, there was life. It was a clear image. Where God is, there is life. Where His presence flows, what is dead comes back to life. Ezekiel understood that the river was not just water, it was hope, it was restoration, it was a new beginning for all the people. The visions continued. He was shown how the land would be divided among the tribes, how each group would have its place, how there would be order and justice. There would be no more chaos, no more abuse. Everything would be different. The message was clear. The past had been hard. The punishment had been real, but the future was not lost. There was a promise, and that promise was firm. Ezekiel shared every detail with the people. Not everyone fully understood the visions. Some were complex, others seemed distant, but there was one thing they did understand. God had not abandoned them. He was still speaking, still guiding, still showing the way. Ezekiel, a man who had seen dry bones rise, was now seeing a nation rise in spirit, not with weapons, not with human strength, but with inner renewal. Kate. Throughout his life, he never sought fame. He never looked for recognition. His life was quiet in many ways, but deep, intense, full of moments few could endure. He had no children to carry his name, but he left something greater, a legacy. His words were written, his visions preserved, his story passed on, and with time, many would understand the value of what he had lived. Ezekiel did not speak only for his generation. He spoke for many more, because his message was not just for a moment, it was eternal. As the years passed, his voice remained strong. Even as his body grew older, his spirit stayed firm. He had seen too much to doubt. He had heard too much to remain silent. And although not all the details of his old age are known, one thing is clear: he remained faithful until the end. The man who was taken far from his land found his purpose in the most unexpected place, and from there he changed the story of his people. But one final part remains, a part that closes his story and reveals the full impact of his life. The years passed in silence. The intensity of the visions was not always constant, but the presence of God never left Ezekiel's life. His walk became calmer, but no less deep. He had lived moments that few men could imagine. He had seen the heavens open. He had heard the voice of God. He had felt the weight of judgment and also the beauty of hope. His life was not ordinary, and his ending would not be remembered like that of any other man. Ezekiel was not a king. He was not a warrior. He did not lead armies. But he spoke with an authority that reached across generations throughout his life. It is never mentioned that he had children. His story was not surrounded by descendants or direct heirs. His inheritance was something else. His inheritance was his words. His inheritance was his visions. His inheritance was the message he left engraved in the heart of a people who had lost everything. It is believed that he lived around 50 years or a little more. There is no exact number, but his active ministry lasted more than 2 decades in exile. During that time, he never returned to Jerusalem. He never saw again the temple he knew in his youth, but he saw something greater. He saw the future. He saw restoration. He saw what did not yet exist, as if it were already before his eyes. And that was enough. In his later years, Ezekiel no longer needed to perform such striking signs as before. Give cinematic. The people had changed. They had learned. Pain had transformed them. The warnings they once ignored, they now remembered with respect, and the promises they heard in the middle of darkness had become their hope. Ezekiel became a guiding figure, not only because of what he said, but because of what he had lived. He was a witness, a living proof that God speaks, corrects, and also restores. His death is not described in detail in ancient texts. There is no dramatic scene, no great final words are recorded, and perhaps that is what makes it most meaningful, because his life had already said everything. It is believed that he died in Babylon, in the same land where he received his calling, far from his home, but close to his purpose. His story did not end with his death, because his writings remained. His visions were copied, read, shared, and over time, they became a fundamental part of the scriptures. Many years later, others would read about the valley of dry bones, about the wheels full of eyes, about the river that gives life, and they would find in those words something that goes beyond time: hope. Ezekiel was a man marked by the supernatural, but he was also a human man. He felt pain, he lost his wife, he experienced rejection, he walked in solitude many times. But he never gave up. He never stopped obeying. He never stopped speaking when he was called to do so. And that is what defines his story, not only what he saw, but how he responded to what he saw. His name means God strengthens, and that is exactly what happened. He was strengthened to speak when no one wanted to listen, to act when no one understood, to remain firm when everything around him was falling apart. Today, his story is still alive, not as an ancient memory, but as a voice that still echoes, a voice that warns, that teaches, that inspires, because in the middle of the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of a new beginning. Ezekiel saw it, he believed it, and he proclaimed it, and even though his life ended, his message never will. If this message has touched your heart, you are invited to join this family of faith. Subscribe to this channel and join us each week to continue learning from the stories and teachings God has for us. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any video. Thank you for being here, and may God bless your life.